My wife drained our account. I emptied it first at 2 a.m. The bank app looked like something had taken a bite out of it. Our balance had these neat little teeth marks, nibbled, not gnawed. 15 years of brown bag lunches and brewing office coffee instead of buying it, and the retirement fund looked thin. My wife had a new consulting buddy who called after midnight and spoke in lowercase whispers. On the shared iPad, a calendar event I hadn't made, Harvest. Cute. There was also a note titled Exit Plan. I promised myself two things. I'd figure out exactly what they planned, I'd flip it, and I'd sleep just fine afterward. Let's start with our comfortable mess. 7 years in, we had a comfortable mess. Our playlist never overlapped. Hers was all tempo and triumph. Mine sounded like a man polishing a canoe at dusk. We agreed on the big stuff. No pets that shed, no throw pillows with inspirational quotes, and the mortgage that ate exactly the same amount every month like a well-behaved piranha. We could banter through anything from traffic to in-laws. Money, though, money was where the banter ran out of road. I'm the planner. I label envelopes. I name spreadsheets. I can tell you the APR of a credit card from 10 paces by the way the font leans. She's the spender with excuses. Not reckless, more enthusiastic. She loves a sale the way I love an index fund, which is to say spiritually. We tried budgets together the way couples try salsa lessons, one of us counting steps, the other freestyling until a plant gets kicked. Enter the consulting friend. His name slid around conversations like an olive in a martini, always bumping the edge, but never staying in the middle. He was charming in that way people are when charm is their entire job. He knew brand ecosystems and synergy funnels, and somehow his calendar always had a hole exactly when I didn't. I told myself not to be petty. I am a grown man who irons his own shirts. But the timing had a shine I didn't like. The retirement pot was my slow-cooked pride. It wasn't glamorous, no meme coins, no wild stock tips. Just automatic contributions, a sleepy blend of funds, and me lovingly ignoring it. When the balance crept past numbers that used to be my annual salary, I celebrated by buying better coffee beans. She would nod when I shared milestones, the way you nod at a neighbor's new lawnmower, happy for them, but not emotionally invested. I took it as division of roles, not a red flag. That's on me. Our first boundary wobble wasn't a fireworks show. She borrowed from savings for a short-term crunch, which is married people code for I didn't ask because I knew you'd say no. It wasn't huge. She promised to replace it next invoice. I said okay because I wanted peace and because I liked being the easygoing guy. Conflict avoidance wears a Hawaiian shirt and calls itself chill. Mine also brings snacks. Then the withdrawal started looking like breadcrumbs. Not enough to scream, just enough to itch. $40 here, $100 there, labeled miscellaneous. If miscellaneous were a person, it would be the roommate who never cleans the blender. I told myself it was noise. I told myself couple share. And then my phone buzzed with a boutique spa charge, and my eyebrows tried to climb off my face. She had an explanation for everything. The co-working pass was free. The spa was a client comp I had to hold on my card. The rideshare to a neighborhood we don't frequent was bad GPS. She delivered these with the smile that used to sell me on camping in the rain. I cracked a joke. I didn't know our retirement plan included cucumber water. She kissed my forehead like I was a sweet old man feeding ducks and asked if I trusted her. Which is a trap, by the way. If you say no, you're a villain. If you say yes, you're a vault. I said yes because that's who I had been. But I started quietly collecting little facts like a raccoon collects shiny lids. A missing card turned up under her Pilates mat, which I learned is apparently where lost things go to strengthen their core. A waiter greeted her as back again, and I learned her work lunch had a reserved booth. I wasn't panicking. I was calibrating. The iPad was our kitchen diplomat, neutral territory for recipes and grocery lists, and unfortunately, any device that forgot to turn off message sync. One night, blue bubbles cascaded down like confetti that spelled out yikes. Flirty nicknames. A calendar invite called Harvest. A document link labeled Exit Plan. A voice note giggling about ripening the nest egg, which, as metaphors go, is both mixed and mean. I didn't breathe for a full minute. The fridge hummed too loud. The house had opinions. Here's where past me would have staged a big confrontation. But new me wanted sequence, not spectacle. I took screenshots quietly and did nothing else. I didn't change a password. I didn't move a dime. I cooked dinner and asked about her day and learned that she loved a new productivity app. I set up alerts, private ones, and watched. If this was a story about trust, I needed a plot, not vibes. The more I listened, the more their pattern explained itself. The consulting friend wasn't just consulting, he was scheduling. The harvest had a date. There were notes about authentication questions, which, by the way, are basically trivia about me. They had rehearsals, I had receipts. And in that gap between knowing and acting, I felt something sturdy click into place. I could be calm and still be decisive. I could leave the playlist alone and change the locks on the vault. First weird receipts. The first red flag wore eucalyptus and had a loyalty program. My phone buzzed during a meeting. Boutique spa, $68. Then another for a Radiance add-on. I don't glow on weekdays, so I texted her. Did our IRA start getting facials? She replied with a heart and client comp holding the charge. We'll reverse. The word reverse did a little dance. Charges rarely moonwalk. Next was the co-working pass she swore was free. It wasn't the $10, it was the principle that free things shouldn't cost money. I opened the receipt and saw an upsell, founder tier. I asked how free had a tier. She said, they validated parking, and kissed my forehead like she was stamping a parking ticket paid. I did a wallet audit. Not the dramatic empty on the table kind, just a quiet shuffle while loading the dishwasher. My secondary card was missing. I asked casually, seen the blue one? She said, check the key bowl. It wasn't there. I found it 2 days later under her Pilates mat, which I guess is where finances go to lengthen. Weird, she said, stretching the word like gum. Must have slipped. Cards are not gymnasts, but okay. The micro story that nibbled my patience was her work lunch. I popped in near the end to say hi because the cafe was on my way back from buying printer ink like a renegade. The waiter smiled at her and said, your usual? It was a reserved booth. Reserved. For a woman who allegedly bounced between pop-up spaces and collaboration nooks, she had a home base that came with a corner plant and a view of the pastry case. She introduced me as the numbers guy, which is fine, but her cheeks had that guilty teenager flush. I made a joke, so this is where the synergy funnels live. She laughed too hard, the kind of laugh that needs a seatbelt. I wanted clarity. I got trust me. That phrase is a velvet rope. It looks nice, but it keeps you out. I wasn't looking to be a security guard at my own marriage, but my phone apparently applied on my behalf. An alert came through at midnight. Cash advance, $400. Cash advance is the financial equivalent of ordering soup at a gas station. Possible, but why? I asked about it in the morning while scrambling eggs like I hadn't slept with one eye open. She waved it off. ATM was weird. I'll Venmo it back. Venmo is where guilt goes to wear emojis. The Venmo never appeared. Another alert did. Ride share to a neighborhood 30 minutes away, right around her co-working hours. GPS must have been drunk again. I tried humor as a crowbar. Should I start labeling the savings do not eat like it's leftovers? She smiled in a way that used to disarm me. You're cute when you fake worry. Fake worry. I took a breath and set my internal meter to quietly curious. It's like airplane mode, but for husbands. Small receipts became a breadcrumb trail with a Yelp account. Boutique spa again. Meal for two at a place with a wine list that makes you pronounce things. A co-working renewal that looked suspiciously like a subscription. The pattern wasn't just spending, it was staging. She learned my tell. I avoid explosions. So she set off sparklers and called them ambiance. I decided to test one thing. Would she involve me if I asked to join? Hey, that co-working space looks nice, I said. Maybe I'll try it on Fridays. A tiny pause. Then, it's more of a private vibe. That's a sentence that doesn't pass the sniff test. Private vibe is just no husbands with softer lighting. She texted me a photo of a latte with a leaf in it. Caption, working hard. I sent back a spreadsheet meme, budgeting is my love language. She reacted with a heart and nothing else. The space between our jokes felt like a thin wall with neighbors arguing on the other side. Another micro moment. I picked up her work bag because she left it by the door, and we trip over bags like it's our hobby. It was heavier than normal. Inside were envelopes, lots of them, the kind banks give you when you request cashier's checks. I didn't open them. I don't snoop. I inventory. There's a difference. She walked in, saw me holding the bag, and said, "Too fast, those are for a client drop." I put it down like it was made of bees. The tension was this. I wanted straight answers. What I got were curved explanations. Every time I reached for a handle, it turned into mist. So I switched tools. I stopped asking and started observing. I turned on transaction alerts she wouldn't see. I looked at timestamps, not tone. I stopped solving for harmony and started solving for data. The weird receipts weren't random. They were rehearsal. And there's a rehearsal, there's a showtime. The shared iPad slip. The iPad chimed during dishes like it wanted a turn to confess. I wiped my hands, tapped the screen, and watched blue bubbles cascade as if someone shook a snow globe full of secrets. Her messages had synced by mistake. Our kitchen diplomat turned into a court stenographer. First thing I saw, flirty nicknames that sounded like they were picked out in a meeting about brand identity. Second, a calendar invite titled Harvest, accepted with a heart. Third, a document link named Exit Plan, which is either a spy movie or a divorce strategy, and we don't own trench coats. A voice note slid in. I pressed play with the kind of curiosity that ruins appetites. Her laugh, his murmur, and then her saying, "The nest egg is ripening." I didn't know you could bruise a metaphor, but there it was, sagging on the vine. My mouth went dry. The fridge hummed like a nervous witness. I took a screenshot, then another, as if the pixels could run away. I read the thread once, then twice, letting it tell me its shape. Not random flirting, not clumsy venting. This was logistics. They traded dates and numbers, mentioned a lunch window, and referenced security questions like they were prepping for a quiz about me. He asked, "Mother's maiden?" She typed it correctly. He said, "First car?" She nailed that too. They ticked off answers like they were inventorying items they stole from my head. There was a calendar block, Friday 12:15 p.m., Harvest. Under it, a note, "Call during lunch, he won't suspect." I felt a heat climb my neck, the kind that usually means I'm about to say something I'll regret. But my voice stayed in my chest. Old me would have stormed into the living room with the iPad raised like a subpoena. New me put the iPad down softly, screenshotted the invite, and let the digital paper trail stack up like pancakes. A text popped from him, "We'll celebrate at the coast." 2 nights. No phones. She replied, "As soon as it lands." Lands. That's how you talk about a wire transfer when you've practiced it out loud. Another ping, a document preview with bullet points. I opened it. Exit plan. It had sections, accounts to drain, scripts for bank, cover story if interrupted. The cover story was IRS hold. I admired the audacity of borrowing authority from 3 scary letters. I didn't move. If I moved, the moment would get noisy. The iPad kept feeding me lines. He's too nice to notice. He never checks during the day. He'll think it's a glitch. Each sentence was a door closing. I felt something in me flip from soft to firm. I've always liked being the easy guy, the one who brings donuts to hard talks. But donuts don't fix theft. Good to know. I backed out of the thread and set up my own theater. I toggled on bank alerts she couldn't see and routed them to a burner email I made at 2:07 a.m. with a name so boring even I would forget it. I added calendar reminders for their reminders. I didn't change a single password. That was the point. If I slammed a door, they'd find another. If I held it open, I could watch who walked through. 3 hours later, she breezed in with coffee and that Mondays aren't real energy. "You good?" she asked casual, a hand on my shoulder. I smiled like a man who didn't have a PDF titled Exit Plan saved to his cloud. "Yeah, just updating spreadsheets." She kissed my head and mentioned a client lunch Friday. I nodded like lunch was a neutral word. As the door closed behind her, I reached for the iPad again and reread the part about authentication. They'd listed my dog's first vet like it was a fun fact. I hadn't thought about that beagle in years. The intimacy of the theft hit me harder than the numbers. They weren't just going after money, they were mining history. I swore quietly into the empty kitchen. The toaster judged me. Choice time. Confront and maybe spook them into new tactics, or keep listening and map the whole pipeline. I picked map. I made a list in my head: notarized blocks, dual auth, silent alerts, legal advice. But I did nothing yet. The plan had to feel like their idea until it wasn't. That night, she propped the iPad to pull a recipe. I pretended to tie my shoe and watched her thumb hover over settings like it had a conscience. She didn't notice the sink. She didn't clean the trail. She read from a screen that was still snitching and handed me a spoon. I tasted the sauce, nodded, and decided the harvest would happen. Just not the way they thought. Inciting incident, the wire template. I found it by accident, which is my least favorite kind of accuracy. I was in our shared notes looking for the chili recipe that doesn't judge my sodium, and there it was, a draft labeled bank call script. Inside, bullet points with my life spread out like a buffet. Account ending in 4412. Routing number correct. Then a line, wire to FinGlobe Limited, same day. FinGlobe sounded like a company that sells oceans. Attached was a PDF outgoing wire template. Amount, the kind that makes your heart feel like it needs a supervisor. The note had timestamps. It was updated that morning. There was a checklist. Initiate at 12:15. He's at work. Say IRS hold if questioned. A separate note, practice answers. And below it, the pop quiz of my adulthood. Mother's maiden, first car, street I grew up on, dog's first vet. All right. I'd seen the rehearsal and the messages. This was the stage directions. I wanted to storm into the next room and audition for the role of furious husband. Instead, I called the bank and auditioned for polite man with pen. Hi, I need to place withdrawal restrictions that require in-person notarization by me only. The manager had the voice of someone who has seen things. We can set a hard stop on wires and large transfers, sir. You'll need to sign in, branch. Today, I said, surprising myself with how steady it came out. At the branch, I brought donuts because stress makes me hospitable and sugar buys patience. You're the spreadsheet guy, the manager said, which is both accurate and possibly my gravestone. We set up notarized withdrawal blocks on the checking and savings and placed a note requiring branch manager approval for any wire. We turned on silent alerts that would ping my burner email. We added a verbal password known only to me, a word boring enough no one would guess it, kumquat. I signed, stamped, and watched the manager file a form that felt like a seatbelt. Next call, brokerage. I want dual authentication on all movements and temporary cooling periods. The rep explained the penalties for early CD redemptions, and I nodded at fees like they were my new roommates. Fine, I said. I'll pay rent. We added a 24-hour hold policy for outgoing transfers unless initiated by me in person with ID. I requested that a fraud flag be placed if multiple transfers were attempted within an hour. The rep said, "That's unusually specific." "I'm unusually motivated," I said. Back home, I opened a high-yield savings in my name and a rollover IRA, perfectly legal, perfectly documented, perfectly boring. I started moving assets and pieces that fit squarely inside the rules. Nothing sneaky, just prompt spring cleaning. Mutual funds? Sold the cash? Redeemed with fees that made me wince, but not as much as losing all of it. I stacked receipts in a folder labeled normal adult paper, which is how you hide treasure from chaos. I left behind a believable balance. Not enough to retire on, enough to tempt a harvest. The checking had a float that could pass as laziness. The savings showed a number that would make a person say, "Today." I also left the ugly credit card debt visible, high enough to look like we were juggling. If they peeked, they'd see dessert and forget the vegetables. The clock started ticking. Friday at 12:15 p.m. I set a calendar reminder that said, "Do not panic," because I'm a fan of clear communication. I practiced my own call script. If she tried a wire, it would bounce off the notarized blocks like a rubber ball off a brick wall. If she tried online, dual auth would ask me to wink at my phone, and I would not. That night she mentioned, "Casual as a cloud, client lunch Friday." I said, "Nice. I've got meetings around then." We smiled like two people reading different books with the same cover. I tested my alerts with a tiny internal transfer. Ping, burner email lit up like a lighthouse. I forwarded it to my attorney's new folder with the subject line, Exhibits Future. He had told me earlier that day, paper trail is oxygen. I intended to breathe. Sleep didn't come easy, but it did come, helped by the sound of protections clicking shut. Every time my brain tried to stage a scene of confrontation, I replaced it with a checklist. Notarized blocks? Check. Dual auth? Check. Secret accounts? Documented. Bait? Placed. I'd never felt so calm while being this angry. It's a weird combo, like espresso and chamomile. But it worked. On Thursday, I checked the template again. She'd added a line, if asked, say husband authorized this morning. Cute. I authorized a different thing that morning, a final round of transfers into my new accounts. The old balances thinned to decoys. The nest egg didn't ripen, it relocated, quietly. Legally. Mine. Plan, make the trap legal. I booked a same-day consult with a lawyer who specialized in marital assets and wore reading glasses like a referee. I told him the short version, messages, harvest, wire template, my blocks, and waited for a speech. He didn't give one. He clicked his pen. You're ahead. Now make it boring and legal. Boring wins. My favorite sentence of the week. We walk through ground rules like traffic cones. Marital assets mean documentation matters. No disappearing money. Every move labeled, receipted, dated, and filed. He said phrases like fiduciary breach and intent to misappropriate, and I nodded like a student who'd done the reading. Set protections, don't pick fights, he said. If she tries, the paper trail talks for you. We froze the line of credit before anyone could treat it like a shopping spree. He drafted a letter to revoke a stale power of attorney I'd signed back when love made me generous with signatures. We added dual auth everywhere like we were hanging extra deadbolts on a digital house. I kept hearing his mantra, boring and legal. Then came the secret but not shady accounts. He guided me through opening a rollover IRA in my name, the kind you set up when you're moving employer-sponsored funds cleanly. High-yield savings, also mine, with an obvious label and monthly statements that would look so ordinary a judge would yawn. Transfers would be permissible pre-separation reallocations. The receipts would read like the world's most wholesome bedtime story. I walked into my bank with a pastry box because I have a coping mechanism and it's carbohydrates. The manager clocked the donuts and grinned. We should put you on retainer. We sat in her glass cube and ticked boxes like we were diffusing a very polite bomb. She walked me through early redemption forms, explained the penalties again, and watched me sign with hands that shook just enough to embarrass me. You okay? She asked. This is my retirement, I said, steadying myself on the sentence. She slid me a tissue like we were sharing a secret. Let's protect it. We liquidated mutual funds in tranches, so nothing screamed panic. I redeemed CDs even though the fees were ugly, better a controlled haircut than a shaved head done by surprise. Each confirmation email landed in a folder with names like memos, receipts, notarized, the stuff of adulting dreams. I opened a second folder, attorney, evidence. Every move, carbon, copied to him. He replied with one-word checks, received. I left bait because traps without cheese are just art installations. The joint checking kept afloat large enough to feel careless, not strategic. The savings showed a number that looked like a juicy now or never. The credit card's swollen balance sat there like a neon sign that said, "We are distractible." I could feel my heartbeat settle into the plan's rhythm. If she pulled early, she'd hit the blocks. If she waited, she'd reach for a bowl I'd already emptied. To make sure nothing smelled like sabotage, I kept our daily life normal. I joked about meal prep. I asked about her clients whose names were all vowels. When she texted a budgeting meme, "We can't both be the spender," I hearted it and sent back a donut emoji. She replied, "You're the sweetest," which is true and also what you say when you don't want to talk numbers. There was an emotional wobble in the bank's parking lot. The paper sat on the passenger seat, neat and final. I put my forehead on the steering wheel and let the grief show up. Not the loud TV kind, the quiet one where you realize the person you trusted knows your mother's maiden name because you told her, and now she's turning it into a crowbar. I let that sit. Then I straightened, texted my lawyer, phase 1 done, and drove home like I hadn't just moved to life. Back at the kitchen table, I built a checklist that could survive a hurricane. Freeze line of credit, check. Revoke POA, check. Dual auth, check. Secret accounts, opened, funded, documented. Silent alerts, routing to the bland burner email whose password could put a hummingbird to sleep. Asset shuffle, within rules, timestamped. Bait set, plausible, mean enough to make a point without breaking anything I'd need later. I even staged a micro moment for cover. Thursday morning, I brought a dozen donuts to the branch with a thank you note. The staff laughed, took selfies, and now if anyone asked why I'd been in and out so much, the answer would be man with pastries and paperwork. People remember sugar, not signatures. The last protective move was psychological. I practiced saying as little as possible. If she called a withdrawal a glitch, I'd call it odd and go stir the sauce. If she hinted at a weekend away, she did, I'd nod and talk about my made-up guy's night. My hands still shook occasionally, but my voice didn't. Calm is a costume. It fits better when the seams are legal. By Thursday night, the trap was a spreadsheet's dream. She thought the harvest was scheduled. I knew the soil had moved. I watched the clock, checked my burner, checked that my heart could survive one more quiet day. Then I rinsed a bowl, turned off the kitchen light, and told myself the boring plan would be the loudest thing in the room when it needed to be. The fake outbound balance. Liquidation day felt like rearranging furniture while pretending you weren't home. Mutual funds first. I sold them in slices so the confirmations looked routine, not like a fire sale. The brokerage dashboard went from a comforting forest of green to a moonscape of cash. CDs next. I signed the early redemption forms, took the fee hit, and told myself hair grows back. Each confirmation chimed into my burner like a calm little bell saying, still yours. I stacked the PDFs like pancakes and fed them to my attorney's folder. I left behind a float that could pass a sniff test. Enough in checking to look lazy, not strategic. Savings with a number that whispered, someone got complacent. The rest moved to the high yield and the rollover IRA with labels so normal they could host a PTA meeting. On the joint credit card, the balance stayed swollen on purpose. It sat there like a lighthouse for bad decisions. If they wanted quick cash, a cash advance would look like dessert. To sharpen the bait, I accidentally skipped an auto payment so the ugly card balance stayed visible on the shared app. The bank would still get paid before anything burned. I'd scheduled a hidden catch-up from the new account. But on the surface, it looked like we were juggling. People who think you're juggling assume you're distracted. Distracted people don't check balances right away. That was the story I wanted them to read. I sent her a meme, a pie chart labeled Where Our Money Goes, with the biggest slice named Vibes. She hearted it and replied, LOL, stop. Then a second bubble. We should talk budget Sunday? Sunday is when people who plan crimes offer to talk about vegetables. I said, perfect, and added a thumbs up. My thumbs were steady. My stomach auditioned for a washing machine. The alerts hummed in the background like crickets. Tiny test transfers, expected pings, nothing from her side yet. The lover's name popped up once on her phone while we watched TV, saved under something innocent, Nate brand, which is not a brand you'd buy if you had options. She angled the screen away without thinking. The show kept playing. I laughed at the wrong time and blamed the cat we do not own. By Thursday afternoon, the bait had a sheen. The joint savings showed a lump that would look delicious to anyone who practiced the phrase as soon as it lands. I checked the pending list. 0. Good. Then an unexpected complication tapped the glass. A text from her, a photo of a coastal B&B brochure, whitened sheets, smug ocean. We should do something like this soon, she wrote. Minutes later, my burner lit up with a test authorization request that wasn't mine. Small, harmless, like someone jiggling a doorknob. Declined. Dual auth did its job. I breathed out and counted to 8 in mortgage. That night she floated, Nora's doing a weekend thing at the coast. Girls reset. You cool if I go? Girls reset is a phrase like gluten-free water. Technically possible, spiritually suspect. I smiled. Go have fun. I've got a guys' night Friday anyway. Board games and trash takes. She pretended to be jealous of the trash takes. I stirred the sauce like I didn't want to flip the table. Friday morning had the quiet of a library test. She dressed brighter than the weather and called it client lunch chic. I packed my laptop bag like it was armor. At 11:02, a neighbor texted me a photo by accident, her work bag gaping in the passenger seat, the edge of a bank envelope peeking like a white tongue. She followed it with, "Oops, wrong person?" I sent back, "No worries," and filed the photo where my lawyer couldn't miss it. At 11:50, I grabbed coffee I didn't need and reread my checklist like a prayer. Notarized blocks would bounce any wire requiring me in person. Dual-auth would strangle online moves. Brokerage was already a cash desert. The Decoy debt glowed on the joint card like a siren. The float looked sloppy by design. If she pulled early, I still won. If she waited exactly for harvest, she'd grip air. She texted at 12:04, "How's your day?" I said, "All meetings, no meaning," which is corporate for I'm not looking at accounts. She reacted with a laugh. A minute later, my burner pinged with a geolocation alert I'd set through a side feature, her phone near the bank branch. Not Pilates. I noted the time, took a sip of coffee that suddenly tasted like pennies, and waited for the next shoe. It came at 12:12, a small pre-authorization probe again declined. Then 12:14, a login to the joint account from a device labeled Kitchen iPad. I marveled at the commitment to irony. The session moved to Wire Transfer Prepare. I watched the progress bar like a parent at a recital. At 12:16, request denied, notarized block, manager approval required. I could almost hear the polite thunk of her forehead hitting the teller glass. She texted me, "Weird bank glitch, babe." Winky face. I replied with a thumbs up and left it there, the digital equivalent, of a nod through a window. The next alert said, "Online transfer attempt. Dual auth required." I didn't approve. The system held the line. A third alert tried the brokerage door and met the desert. Silence followed, the kind that means someone is whispering angrily in a parking lot. They pivoted, as predicted, toward the neon sign. Cash advance? Another internal alert suggested, a note from the bank's risk system to me because I asked nicely. I tightened the bait one notch. I queued the catch-up payment to post at 5 p.m. after their lunch theater, so the card would look tasty right now. If they reached for it, they'd net debt and nothing else. I set my phone down, exhaled, and let the trap do the talking. Surveillance without creeping. Surveillance without creeping is a tightrope. Gather facts, keep dignity, don't turn into a raccoon in your own marriage. I routed every bank alert to the world's most boring burner email, then taught myself to read metadata like it was gossip. Approvals, denials, device IDs, little breadcrumbs with timestamps wearing tiny hats. I wasn't peeking through blinds, I was building a weather report. Location told the same story in a straighter font. We had shared location on for safety and Thai takeout runs that went wrong. On Pilates days, her dot often stretched itself across town to a very flexible bank branch. The first time I saw it camped there for 40 minutes, I felt nauseous and weirdly relieved. Nausea because obvious. Relief because plans, unlike vibes, leave footprints. I kept my hands off her phone and my feet out of her bag. The neighbor helped by accident. She texted me, "Saw your wife at the branch, love her blazer," with 3 sparkle emojis. I sent back a smile and filed the text in exhibit land. Another neighbor mentioned her work bag looked stuffed with envelopes. I said, "Client paperwork," like a man practicing lines for a play he didn't audition for. The bank alert started sketching a rhythm, small balance checks, device switches, little test pulls that tripped dual auth like fishing line. Each declined attempt came with a tiny code. I screenshotted, timestamped, and forwarded to my attorney with subject lines like 12:04 harmless, no device, 12:12 probe declined, and pattern forming, see attachments. He replied with logged because romance is dead and due process is eternal. Mixed into the data was feeling. When the first true attempt failed, notarized block holding like rebar. I had to sit down. The relief wasn't victory. It was a seatbelt catching. Then the shame tried to pop up. How did I get here? Rehearsing security answers to my own life with strangers who pronounce synergy like a religion? The shame got 10 seconds. After that, I gave the minutes back to my plan. Evidence doesn't collect itself, so I learned a polite way to save cameras. Public records exist, and banks have retention policies longer than my attention span. I filed a routine records request for branch lobby footage during the harvest window, citing transaction concerns on my account. The clerk said, "We'll need exact times." I had exact times. I had exact everything. She took my list and said, "We'll see what we can release." Translation: your ducks are in a row. We respect the ducks. The conflict sat like a heavy book on my chest, the urge to confront versus the need for clean lines. Confrontation would give me volume. Evidence would give me gravity. Gravity wins. So, I kept the day normal. I answered emails about quarterly projections with opinions no one asked for. I ate a granola bar that tasted like cardboard with ambition. When she texted a selfie, client lunch vibes, I sent back, crushing it. The burner pinged with device changes 5 seconds later. She was crushing something all right. The window opened at 12:15 Friday. My phone didn't buzz. My email did. Burners don't chime, they whisper. Attempted wire blocked. Notarization required. Online transfer attempt, dual auth requested. Secondary login from kitchen iPad, session locked due to mismatch. It was like listening to a polite security guard say no in different languages. I marked each one and added my little notes. I wasn't gloating. I was documenting. At 12:28, the shared location dot drifted from the branch to the next block, probably a cafe. 2 dots joined it briefly, then one peeled off. I pictured him with sunglasses that think they're important. Another alert. Credit card cash advance inquiry. I let out a breath. I didn't know I was hoarding. The trap's neon sign had worked. Dead is all that harvest would yield. I did one more thing, a small insurance move that felt like flossing. I called the card issuer and asked that any cash advance over $50 trigger a manual review and a confirm call to me. The rep said, "We don't usually," and then saw the notes on my account and changed her mind. "We can do a courtesy flag." Courtesy flags are how institutions say, "We see your spreadsheet." By 1:10, the storm had passed. Her dot moved toward a boutique that sells candles named after emotions. My email quieted. I ate a sandwich I couldn't taste and wrote the timeline while it was still hot. Start to finish, precise as a metronome. Device, attempt, block, pivot. I added the neighbor's accidental photo, my records request confirmation, and the manager's earlier notarized block signature page. The packet looked like a boring book I couldn't wait to read aloud in a room with fluorescent lighting. The relief was strange. It didn't feel triumphant, it felt organized. Like labeling bins after a flood. I wanted to text her and say, "Come home, let's talk," but talking would turn the clean lines into mud. So I set the table for dinner, boiled pasta, and practiced breathing like a person who hadn't just watched his marriage try to rob him at lunch. When she walked in later, bright and breezy, I met her with calm I had earned. Evidence is confidence you can hold in your hands, and mine finally stopped shaking. The harvest call. At 12:03, my phone lit up with a name I recognized from their messages. His. She'd added him to a group call with her, and through the iPad sync hiccup, the audio mirrored on our kitchen slab like the world's worst podcast. I didn't press anything. The tablet simply blinked awake and offered me their rehearsal in stereo. I stood still, hand on a cabinet door, and listened. Her voice came bright. "Okay, one more time. Security answers." His tone was teacher serious. "Mother's maiden?" She said it correctly, the syllables smooth from practice. "First car?" She smiled into the mic. I could hear it. Navy blue Civic, manual, smelled like crayons. He laughed. "Street you grew up on?" "Hickory," she answered. Spelled like the barbecue, not the tree. They giggled like students nailing flashcards. He added, "Backup question. What's your favorite movie?" She didn't hesitate. His is the one with the spaceship that's actually about loneliness, she said, which is uncomfortably specific and also annoyingly right. Then he said, bank call flow, you'll say there's an IRS hole, she cut in, rehearsed, and that we need to push the retirement account to FinGlobe to keep it from freezing. They both paused, conspirators admiring their own boldness. Then my favorite line I never wanted to hear, he's too nice to notice. She said it like a compliment. He never checks during the day, he added, as if decreeing a law of physics. He thinks glitches are just technology being technology. Their laughter merged, light and mean. Time slowed. Something in me that used to cushion everything finally set down the cushions and stood up. He switched gears. Timing, you call at 12:15 when he's head down. I'll be nearby in case we need to pivot. She replied, we'll celebrate after. Coast, 2 nights, no phones. A paper rustle, then him, careful, we should also consider if he's changed anything. He wouldn't. That's not his style. The word style fell like a marble on tile. They moved to the script. He said, if the manager pushes back, go to husband authorized this morning. She read it back line by line, her voice flattening into customerservice.com. If asked, it's a transfer to cover a hold. He coached her pauses like a director complicating a character. They practiced a small chuckle for the glitch part. It was eerie theater. I could see them in a conference room, handouts, bullet points, the world's pettiest heist workshop. Then, a pause. His voice dropped. You sure you can do this? She went quiet, then answered soft. He doesn't see me. Not really. He sees a budget with hair. My jaw clenched so hard my molars introduced themselves. I wanted to crash the call, put my voice in their ears, say something clean and sharp. Instead, I leaned against the counter and let the anger file itself like mail. He said, you deserve a reset. She said, we deserve it. That we slid over me like cold water. He shifted back to logistics. Okay. Final round. You call. I'm your CPA friend if it gets dicey. She practiced the introduction. Hi, I'm calling about a wire to FinGlobe, he interrupted. No, go softer. Hey, quick question about a transfer. They trimmed words like chefs. Then my phone buzzed. My own secret alert. A scheduled reminder I'd set with a name only I'd find funny. 5 minutes early is on time. My chest loosened. Decision time. Defense had been good. Offense would be better. While they refined their tone, I opened my brokerage app and released the last holdings into the rollover IRA. At 12:10, cash moved like a school of fish into a cave with my name on it. The joint account blinked thinner. The bait stayed fat enough to be believable. I took a slow breath. Calm is easier when you already pulled the plug. They drifted into small talk. He asked about the coastal B&B with the smug ocean. She said she could taste the champagne already. Then, almost tenderly, he asked, what if he figures it out? She laughed, a sound I used to love. He'll say it's a glitch. He'll Google it. He'll make a spreadsheet about the glitch. I smiled, despite everything, because she knew me. Then I stopped smiling because she knew me and chose this anyway. He closed the meeting like a manager. Okay, final checklist. ID's ready, answers locked, story set. At 12:15, we harvest. She whispered, harvest. The call clicked off. The iPad returned to a recipe photo, serene, as if nothing had happened. I stood there, palm flat on cool stone, and let the room be a room again. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt exact. The proof wasn't just in text anymore. It had a soundtrack. The too nice to notice line turned into a switch I could flick off. I wasn't going to be nice. I was going to be precise. I wiped the non-existent crumb off the counter, checked the confirmation for my final transfer, and at 12:12 walked back to my desk. 5 minutes early, I'd already taken the harvest home. Their attempt, my denial. At 12:15, my inbox whispered instead of screamed. Outgoing wire attempt. blocked, notarization required. I pictured the banker's polite smile hardening into policy. 2 minutes later, secondary login, online transfer initiated, dual auth pending. My phone lit for approval like a desperate doorbell. I let it ring. Declined. The system did what paperwork promised. It told Charm to wait outside. Shared location showed her dot planted at the branch. The note on my calendar read, "Don't gloat." It was for me, not the universe. At 12:19, a new alert. Brokerage sweep attempt restricted. The brokerage account, already emptied into my rollover, looked like a clean plate. If they wanted crumbs, there were none. I forwarded each alert to my attorney with the subject line, "Harvest window, blocked, C times." He replied, "Received, which is lawyer for lovely weather we're having." Then my phone buzzed with a text from her. "Weird bank glitch, babe," she wrote, and added a winky face that landed like a mosquito. I replied with a thumbs up, because words were a currency I didn't plan to spend. 3 dots bubbled, then disappeared. Across town, somewhere between the teller window and denial, a man named Nate Brand probably suggested Plan B. My email soon agreed. Credit card, cash advance inquiry. The trap's neon sign was doing its job. I'd set the card to flag anything over 50, which meant the system politely elbowed a human. A rep called me. "Hi, we're seeing an attempt for a cash advance on your joint card." I said, calm as lentils, "Deny all cash advances today. Note account under review." She read the account notes, paused, and said, "Understood, sir." Courtesy and caution shook hands. Silence followed, which is how panic sounds in public. Another location nudge, her dot slid to the cafe next door. I imagined the conversation. "Glitchy bank, try online. He never checks. Just the card then." My burner pinged with a denial on the card, loud in its politeness. "Advance declined. Manual review required." The whole thing felt like watching someone try to pull a door that clearly says push. I didn't laugh. I let the feeling pass like a wave, steady and cold. At 12:37, she texted again. "Babe, do you need anything from the store?" Translation, "Are you watching?" I typed, "We're good. You okay?" She came back with, "Yeah, just annoying tech stuff." Tech stuff is what people say when electricity has nothing to do with it. I pocketed my phone and let the day keep pretending to be normal. Then came the pivot that made the packet sing. A login from the kitchen iPad, another prepare wire screen, and a manager note attached by the bank, customer informed of notarization requirement, appeared surprised. I highlighted appeared surprised because it's the flavor text judges enjoy. They tried one last wobble, small transfers under the wire limit, stitched together. Dual auth sliced them apart, one by one, like a patient chef. By 12:55, the feed slowed. Location drifted away from the branch. I finally exhaled like a man granted oxygen. The Decoy balance still sat in the joint savings, visible and untouchable. The ugly card debt glowered, doing its petty work. The brokerage remained an empty stage. Every gate I had closed held. Every path they thought was clear had a polite sign that said, "See manager." At 1:10, my attorney called. "Timeline looks good. Keep it boring." I said, "It's a sleepy masterpiece." He chuckled in legal. "Document your recollection now." I opened a note and wrote it all down while the details were still crisp. The times, the devices, the order of pivots, the emojis. I wrote winky face like it was evidence because today it was. She beat me home by an hour and filled the house with fragrance that smelled like victory in commercials. When I walked in, she was bright, overdressed for a client lunch that had apparently needed a tuxedo of lies. "How was your day?" she asked, all light. I dropped. My bag hung up my calm. "Busy. Yours?" She shrugged. "Fine. Tech was weird." The word weird begged for company, but I didn't add any. Her phone buzzed on the counter. Nate's name didn't appear. Instead, it was Nate Brand, tidy as a logo. She flipped it face down without looking. We circled each other with domestic choreography, mail stack, keys in bowl, shoes aligned, like partners who learned the dance and forgot the song. I set pasta to boil because nothing says neutrality like water making up its mind. Over dinner, she tried a story. Bank said something about new security protocols. I twirled linguine and asked, "Did they?" She nodded too quickly. "Just routine stuff. You know how they are." "I do know how they are. I am how they are." I said, "Good to know," and refilled her water like a man who hadn't seen her try to siphon a life. My phone vibrated with a final note from the card issuer. "Account remains under review through end of day." Perfect. I smiled into my glass. She changed the subject to Nora's Coast Reset trip. "Might be nice," she said, eyes wide with innocence. "Salt air." I said, "Take pictures," and the words tasted like patience. Under the table, my leg bounced. Over the table, my face didn't. When she reached for my hand, I let her hold it and counted 3 slow breaths. Then I let go first, a small boundary, visible only from one seat. She blinked, cataloged it, pivoted to dessert. I said I was full. Later, when she showered, I printed 3 pages, the wire template she drafted, the bank's notarized block confirmation, and the attempted transfer log. The printer hummed like a witness clearing its throat. I slid the papers under a book on the dining table. Dinner had been the warm-up. The real conversation would have plates as props and receipts as dialogue. She came back glowing, wrapped in a towel like an alibi. "Movie," she offered. "Rain check," I said. "Long day." She nodded, disappointed on purpose. I kissed her cheek with a politeness that felt like a closing shift. Upstairs, I laid out the packet and set 2 forks beside it. Tomorrow's menu would be pasta and truth. Tonight, I let silence earn interest. The confrontation at dinner. Friday night, she glided in like she'd been poured into her dress. "Client dinner," she said, even though the clients were invisible and smelled like ocean brochures. I plated pasta like a man auditioning for calm. Steam rose. Parmesan snowed. My hands didn't shake. Much. "How was your day?" She speared a noodle, performed casual. "Busy." Tech was weird. The word weird again. It followed her around like a puppy with bad boundaries. "Yeah?" I sipped water. "Weird how?" She shrugged. "Bank hiccups. New protocols. It's fine." She smiled at me like I was a traffic cone she wanted to move around. "You?" "All meetings, no meaning," I said, our shared corporate joke. She laughed on cue. We chewed. We didn't look at the elephant because it had excellent camouflage and a winky face. I waited until the pasta had a dent in it. Then I slid a paper from under my plate and laid it between us. First page, her wire template. The header looked back at her like a mirror with better lighting. "What's this?" I asked, neutral. The word bank sat on the paper like a witness. She froze for half a second, then blinked and went to a fence like a sprinter hearing a false start. "Why are you going through my things?" The tone tried to shame. My fork kept twirling. Calm didn't feel natural, but it fit. "These were synced on the shared iPad," I said. "Kitchen counter, next to the salt." I slid the second sheet, the bank's notarized withdrawal block. Stamps. Signatures. Boring, beautiful bureaucracy. "And this is the part where you didn't move anything today." Her eyes flicked left, right, like she was checking for exits on a plane that had already landed. "You're being controlling," she said, finding a word with teeth. "It's just financial housekeeping." "Financial housekeeping doesn't involve FinGlobe and lunch windows," I said. "And scripts for if interrupted." I tapped the wire template. "You plan to zero my retirement." "Our retirement," she snapped, like that fixed the arithmetic. "We make decisions together." Did we? I slid the third page, attempted transfer log with times and polite denials. "No together here. Just you, your consultant, and my mother's maiden name." My voice stayed even. Inside, a small drumline went nuts. She leaned back, went for wounded. I felt trapped. You never listened. You spreadsheet me. Her eyes glossed like she could cry on command. She might have believed it. I listen, I said. I also feed accounts so future us eats. You told him I'm too nice to notice. You were half right. I let that hang. She flinched like I'd mispronounced a secret. She tried a new angle. We were moving money to keep it safe from an IRS hold. She said it with the confidence of someone who just met the IRS in a dream. Nate knows finance. Nate knows how to rename himself brand and rehearse bank answers, I said. The IRS doesn't call at lunch and ask for wires to Coastal Champagne. My tone stayed calm because I brought boring to a knife fight. She stared at the pages, and I watched the fight in her shrink to fit the facts. Then the Hail Mary. We could have talked about this. You didn't have to trap me. I set protections, I said. You set a date called Harvest. I gestured at the plates. I would have preferred talking. You scheduled theft. The word theft landed hard. She recoiled, then lunged. It's not theft if it's ours. It wasn't ours when you planned to move it without me, I said. It wasn't ours when he coached you to lie about authorization. It definitely wasn't ours when you laughed about me being too nice. My jaw softened because anger had done its job. I'm done being nice. I'm going to be clear. She crossed her arms so tight the bracelets complained. So what now? You going to punish me? Cut me off? Tell my mother? The last one came with a smirk, like I'd never dial a grown woman's mom. What now, I said, is simple. This weekend, I'm taking space. Cooling off. You can stay here or not, but Monday I'll be meeting with counsel to start separation. We'll let the paperwork talk so we don't have to shout. She blinked fast, the way people do when their script ran out of pages. You're overreacting, she tried. It was a test. We were just seeing if the bank passed, I said. You didn't. Silence moved in, pulled out a chair and sat with us. The only sound was the clock flexing its power. She glanced at the door like the coast was knocking. I'll go to Nora's, she said, which we both knew meant the smug ocean with the brochure sheets. We can reset. You'll cool off. I'll cool off, I said. And I'll change the playlist. That confused her for a second. Good. Leave the keys. Take what you need for the weekend. We'll talk lawyers on Monday. No more kitchen iPad surprises. She stood so fast her chair scraped an apology. You're making a mistake, she snapped, gathering her bag like it had feelings. You'll regret treating me like this. Stacked the papers into a neat little tower. I regret a lot of things, I said. Protecting my retirement isn't on that list. She hovered at the door, expecting a last-minute reverse. I didn't offer one. She finally tossed the house key into the bowl. It rang once, bright and small. The door closed. The house inhaled. I cleared the plates, rinsed them, and put the packet back on the table to dry like laundry. My hands stilled. The quiet felt heavy, then honest. Cooling off weekend started at 8:12 p.m., with clean dishes and a calendar that belonged to me again. The split becomes real. She left with a suitcase that zipped like a closing argument. The house did that thing where it remembers it's a house. Air returns to normal speed. Fridge hums, clock clicks without an audience. I slept like a person who finally stopped guarding a door, not long, but deep enough to dream about nothing. Morning brought my new job, be boring and official. Coffee first, because civilization has rules. Then I called my lawyer. She left last night, I said. We're moving to separation. He said, good. We file today. Paper speaks a language people can't outcharm. I opened the evidence folder, attached the timeline, the notarized blocks, the device logs, the screenshots. I typed the subject line so plain it looked invisible. Documentation, financial misappropriation attempts. He called back within an hour. This is clean, he said. We'll file a petition for legal separation, include a motion to safeguard retirement assets, and request temporary financial orders. He talked, I initialed. We became a team that could bore a hurricane into submission. He asked one last thing. Any communications from her? I checked my phone. A single message, taking space. We'll talk Monday. I forwarded it with a date stamp that looked like good manners. I froze the line of credit in the morning light, the way you pull a quilt over your toes. The bank manager recognized my voice. Paperwork came through, she said. You're locked tight. I thanked her like she caught a falling piano. Then I sent a polite email to HR, update beneficiary information on my 401k. Direct deposit stays the same, mailing address unchanged. HR replied with a thumbs up emoji made of words, processed. By noon, she posted a fresh start story. Sunset, clinking glasses, a caption about growth that would make a succulent blush. Her friends sent hearts. One mutual friend sent me a text that tried to be neutral, saw her story. You okay? I typed, working on it, because it was the truest sentence available. Another friend, less neutral, wrote, not surprised TBH. People reveal themselves when the group chat gets crispy. Her mother called. Caller ID announced past holidays. I stared, then answered because I'm polite against my will. Sweetie, she began, skipping pleasantries. This is a misunderstanding. You know she's dramatic. I could hear a TV in the background, daytime judge show handing out verdicts. Mrs. Alvarez, I said steady, I'm handling this through counsel. If she wants to talk, her lawyer can reach mine. Silence, offended, and floral. Well, she said, that's cold. It's structured, I replied. We exchanged goodbyes that didn't match, and I blocked her number for the weekend like I was closing a window against weather. The legal steps moved like a well-oiled filing cabinet. My attorney pinged me drafts, petition, motion for temporary orders, exhibits it through never again. I read every line, added a comma like a man who believes in punctuation as a lifestyle, and signed. He stamped, filed, e-served. It felt like buckling every seatbelt on a plane before a storm you already flew through. Financial clarity arrived the way sunlight does, quiet and undeniable. The retirement accounts were quarantined behind court-muscled words. The joint debts lined up on the page like toddlers with sticky hands, clearly assigned, not my job to wipe anymore. The house, our biggest shared noun, sat in the column labeled to be negotiated, but my lawyer marked a note, strong likelihood of buyout in your favor given evidence. It was math with a moral. Anger faded like a fever. The spike was over. Sweat cooled. Grief showed up in its place, softer and honest, holding a stack of old photos I didn't want to look at. I let it sit. You can't spreadsheet that part. I washed 2 plates out of habit, dried one, realized there was no second person to hand it to, and laughed once, a short, broken sound that still counted. The house got quiet in a way that wasn't ominous, just available. I put on a new playlist, less canoe polishing, more sunrise walking. I deleted the harvest calendar from the iPad and replaced it with groceries by actual vegetables. I opened windows. The air did what air does, moved on. My neighbor waved from her porch like we were in a small-town sitcom and yelled, "You okay?" in the voice people use when okay is a spectrum. I said better today and meant it. Enough. Her kids set up a lemonade stand at the corner with a sign that looked like a ransom note in crayon. I bought the whole pitcher because generosity feels better when it has sugar. He yelled, "Dude." I corrected him to "sir" and failed. By afternoon, the paperwork had rhythm. Files in, confirmations out, my attorneys received like a metronome. I forwarded the branch's camera retention response to his paralegal. "We'll subpoena if needed," she wrote, adding a smiley I didn't know paralegals were allowed to use. The packet now had dates, times, faces, stamps, the legal equivalent of a 4-part harmony. Her last text of the day said, "Let's keep this civil." I stared at it until it became a shape that meant nothing. Then I typed, "Agreed. Lawyer only," and put my phone face down for the first time in months because hiding wasn't necessary anymore. Dinner was a sandwich over the sink, which is both pathetic and peaceful. I sat afterward on the back steps with my coffee mug pretending to be whiskey and watched the sky do its low-budget fireworks. Relief arrived unannounced, put its feet on my coffee table, and made itself at home. Not triumph, not revenge, just room to breathe. Before bed, I changed the Wi-Fi name from We Got This to We Got Receipts because petty humor is a vitamin. I set a fresh alert on every account that matters and turned off the ones that didn't. Then I laid down in a bed that was suddenly simple and slept without checking a single app. In the morning, I'd wake up to emails with docket numbers and new instructions. Tonight, I had a quiet house, a locked retirement, and a playlist that finally sounded like mine. Community ripples. The first ripple hit the group chat like someone dropped a toaster into a kiddie pool. Where's she? Soft launch of a new life? Someone joked, because comedy is easier than context. I typed, "We're separating," and put the phone down like it was hot. 3 pings came fast. "Wait, what? Call me." And from Mark, who lives for drama, not surprised. Mark sends not surprised to everything, including weather. Friends split into camps and nobody admits exist. Camp shock, loud and blinking. Camp knew something, quieter, with receipts they never shared. Kara called in a whisper like my living room had ears. "I saw her with Nate Brand at Bar Juniper months ago," she said, guilt spilling. I thought it was a client vibe. Client vibe is the trench coat of excuses. I said, thanks, because I didn't have energy for blame that arrived with apologies. Work stayed calm in the way HR manuals prefer. I walked into my boss's office with a sentence ready. "I need to update beneficiary information." He nodded, pretended not to notice my "I haven't slept" eyes. HR clicked boxes while asking about my weekend plans like we were at a barbecue. Beneficiary changed. Emergency contact moved to my sister. No gossip, no side glances. Just form fields and the soft hum of the printer, which is the sound of adulthood pretending to be neutral. Then a micro-museum moment. Cleaning out a drawer, I found a note from year 2. Her handwriting, round and earnest. "We'll retire by the lake. You'll fish, I'll read. We'll get sunburned and not care." I sat on the floor and let the paper weigh more than it should. The dream had a nice kitchen, but the lease was only ever in my name. She wanted an exit. I wanted a map. Different verbs. Across town, the Lovers Gallery had poor lighting. A mutual acquaintance texted me a screenshot of her coastal story, feet up, ocean smug as ever, captioned "Fresh air fixes everything." Someone commented, "Y'all are goals. The internet will congratulate a fire if it has a filter." I laughed once, a clean, empty sound, and put the phone face down again. Petty thought, I hope the B&B coffee was terrible. The community math kept sorting itself. My sister, who loves me loudly, arrived with a casserole the size of a carry-on and opinions sharp enough to slice paper. "You did right," she said, scanning the room for mess she could fix with Lysol. "You can't spreadsheet love, but you sure can spreadsheet theft." We ate in the quiet and debated whether to rename the Wi-Fi one more time. She pitched Harvest This, which was funny and a little mean. I saved it for later. Neighbors did what neighbors do, offered ladders and unsolicited wisdom. Mr. Patel across the street said, "Marriage is 2 accounts, one of money, one of trust. The trust overdraft fees are brutal." He handed me his power drill like I might need to secure something emotional to a wall. I thanked him and promised to return it with all fingers. At work, I felt the odd relief of being boring again. I changed my direct deposit split to route a little extra into the new high yield, adjusted my 401k by 1%, and told the benefits portal we were now employee plus no one. The portal congratulated me like I'd won a contest. I printed the confirmation and slid it into the folder labeled "We're fine," which is both a lie and a mission statement. Humor kept sneaking in like a raccoon. I finally ate takeout on the good plates we never used because life was supposed to be a series of small celebrations we saved for later. The plates handled lo mein like champs. I raised a fork to the empty chair and said, "We're retiring by the sink tonight," which is bleak if you squint and comforting if you don't. The friend calculus kept moving. 2 of her people unfollowed me like I'd failed a vibes test. One of mine sent a long message about forgiveness that sounded like a TED Talk given by a throw pillow. I typed, "I'm aiming for sane, not saint," and muted the thread. Another ping, Nora, patron saint of coastal resets, DM'd, "If you want to vent, I'm here." I did not. I sent a polite thumbs up, our generation's ceasefire. Mediation date landed in my inbox with all the charm of a dentist appointment. My lawyer wrote, "Numbers favor clean cut given evidence." Translation, math is about to do what hearts won't. I stood at the window, watched two kids ride scooters and jagged lines, and let that sentence plant itself. Clean cut. Not perfect. Clean. Before bed, I opened the year 2 note again and read it without wincing. Lakes still exist. Books still open. Sun still burns. The dream wasn't a lie, it just wasn't ours. I slid the note back into the drawer, next to the spare batteries and a tape measure, tools for building a different future. Then I turned off the light and let the neighborhood be a neighborhood while my world made smaller, better ripples. Mediation in the numbers. Mediation day smelled like coffee and carpet cleaner. The conference room had a ficus that had seen things. My lawyer slid me a legal pad and whispered, "Boring wins," which has become my family crest. Across the table, she arrived with a neat bun and an expression that tried to be Switzerland. Nate didn't come in. He hovered in the hallway like a half-remembered ad. The mediator had the tone of a substitute teacher who collects confiscated cell phones. "We're here to resolve property and temporary orders," she said, clasping her hands like they could hold everybody together. She asked for opening remarks. My lawyer kept it short. "Our position is equitable split minus attempted misappropriation, supported by exhibits." He tapped the folder that had become my personality. Her lawyer tried to make weather out of a house fire. "This is a marital balance issue, not malice," she said, as if schedules named harvest just sprout in the garden. Decisions were shared in spirit. The mediator raised an eyebrow so gentle it burned. "We'll rely on documents." We did. Exhibit A, the wire template with fin globe and lunch window. Exhibit B, notarized withdrawal blocks, signatures tidy as prayer. Exhibit C, attempted transfers, times, devices, the polite wall of no. Exhibit D, messages rehearsing my mother's maiden name like a trivia night with stakes. The mediator skimmed, nodding in a rhythm. "Intent matters," she said softly, writing the word down like it had weight. She looked at my wife. "Did you initiate or attempt to initiate these transfers without his consent?" A beat stretched. My wife's lawyer squeezed her elbow. "There were inquiries," she said. "We had concerns about an IRS hold." The mediator's pen paused. "You understand the IRS does not require private same-day offshore wires." My wife's jaw flexed. I was misinformed. The ficus rustled, or maybe I imagined that. Numbers came out like mercy. The mediator drew 2 columns. Assets left, home equity, car, modest cash and joint checking. My retirement accounts behind court muscle. Debts, the swollen joint card, a small personal loan with a personality disorder. "Proposal?" the mediator asked. My lawyer slid a sheet. "He buys out the house at appraised minus her share of attempted theft considerations. Retirement remains his. Joint debt allocated proportionate to use, with her covering the card she attempted to leverage." Her lawyer countered with a speech about shared futures and sunsets. She contributed to the household in non-monetary ways. The mediator nodded. "Understood." Also documented attempts to misappropriate, which courts viewed dimly. Dimly is legal for nope. We moved to the mortgage. "Buyout value," my lawyer said, tapping the appraiser's report. "He can finance, pre-approval attached." I slid the lender letter forward like a hall pass. My wife's eyes widened to hair, the realization that the house wasn't a pawn. It was a choice I could afford. "I want the house," she said, sudden and brittle. "We started here." The mediator kept her voice steady. "Do you have financing?" Silence did a lap around the table. "We can apply," her lawyer tried. "He's ready," the mediator replied, almost kind. "Time matters. Stability matters." Her lawyer pivoted to retirement. Equitable portion. My lawyer countered with the doctrine I now loved more than coffee. Offsets for attempted conversion, court discretion favors safeguarding. The mediator flipped to my folder's back page. Given the evidence, we're leaning toward him retaining retirement intact, with other assets adjusted to balance. She glanced up. My wife's mouth tightened like a knot. We sorted the small stuff like people divide Halloween candy. The car stayed with her. I didn't want it or its monthly sigh. The personal loan followed her too. The banker notes showed who loved it first. The joint card, our neon disaster, landed where it belonged. She attempted to use this vehicle for a cash advance, the mediator said, setting the statement down like a wet towel. She'll assume it. Her lawyers started to object, then saw the highlights and sat back. Break time. In the hall, I saw Nate pretending to read a brochure about mediation services as if it were a thriller. He didn't make eye contact. I didn't offer the option. Back in the room, the mediator reset the table with the patience of a librarian. "We're close," she said. Signposts, not speeches. Final pass. House to me via buyout. Retirement untouched. Her car to her loan to her, joint card to her. Small checking split down the middle like a peace offering. Spousal support? The mediator did the math and shrugged at the statute. Short-term, limited, if any, she said. My lawyer scribbled the numbers so modest it blushed. Her lawyer whispered. They huddled, came up with a bigger ask. The mediator split the difference with a ruler in her head. 3 months, fixed. Then both of you sail your own boats. Boats. I allowed a mental canoe joke and let it go. Then pins. No speeches. Just ink. My wife signed without looking up. I signed like a man writing his name under a new streetlight. The mediator collected pages and smiled the way people do when the storm moves one town over. You've resolved the major items, she said. Congratulations on choosing the calmest possible ending. Outside, the hallway felt like fresh air. Nate studied a stain on the carpet and didn't look up. I didn't offer a nod or a moral. I walked past him carrying a folder full of boring victories. On the sidewalk, I called my lawyer. We done? He said. We're filed and finalizing. Go take a walk. So I did. A long, stupidly peaceful one. The numbers were quiet. My chest was too. Rebuilding without noise. The first morning after mediation, I woke up before my alarm and didn't grab my phone. Coffee went into a mug I actually like, not the chipped world's okayest husband one. The kitchen sounded like a kitchen again, drip, hum, light. I stood at the window and let the calm be unremarkable. Ordinary is underrated. Routine built itself in small bricks. Sunrise walk. Gym without performative check-ins. No, how long you gonna be? Texts, no guilt cardio. I lifted, stretched, and left without narrating my exit like a flight attendant. Back home, I opened my laptop and rebuilt a budget that didn't need approval to exist. Fewer categories, more air. Financially, I picked boring on purpose. Contributions back on automatic, just slower, safer portfolio mix, fewer hero moves. The rollover IRA sat where it belonged, yawning. I turned on alerts I'll never turn off, the polite chimes that say, still yours. Every account got a two-factor that texts only me and a verbal password that sounds like something an accountant would knit. I made a laminated list in case future me forgets. Future me loves lamination. The house shifted into single-person mode. I boxed up the things that belonged to we, labeled them with dates for pickup, and slid them into a corner. No rage purging, just sorting. The playlist changed too. Less melancholy canoe polishing, more quiet optimism. On the mantle, I replaced a coastal brochure she left behind with a photo my sister took of me losing at cornhole. Real life, ugly angle, honest grin. A neighbor's kid set up a lemonade stand on the corner again, a cardboard empire with prices that qualified as bold. I bought the whole jug because sugar tastes like permission. He yelled, legend, and I corrected him to sir, which lasted 3 seconds. Back home, I poured 2 glasses, drank both, and called it hydration with flair. Humor crept back into the budget. I renamed the emergency fund Not for Lovers. The high-yield savings became Future Canoe or whatever. The travel sinking fund stayed, newly modest, called Anywhere Without a Brochure. I cooked dinner for one on the good plate, wiped it like it mattered, and put it back in the cabinet without waiting for an occasion to justify it. Tuesday counts. Her mom tried one more time, left a voicemail about forgiveness and family treasures. I forwarded it to my lawyer because boundaries are a habit now. He replied with his favorite word, received. The line stayed clean. I didn't send a reaction to her latest healing at the coast post, a photo of a sunset that had the nerve to be gorgeous. I let it scroll away. Sunsets are public property. Grief still clocks in. It doesn't respect business hours. It shows up when I open a drawer and find the year 2 lake note, or when a song I used to like walks into a room it doesn't own anymore. I let it sit on the couch, finish its drink, and leave without a speech. Anger's off the schedule. It got laid off with cause. Relief took the corner office. Saturday, I did a final sweep of what she left behind. A scarf, 3 bobby pins, a stack of visioning worksheets. I put them in a bag with a note, pick up Tuesday, porch. No commentary. I changed the door code afterward, not because I was scared, because I enjoy sleeping. I vacuumed lines into the rug like a person auditioning for stability and laughed at myself when I realized what I was doing. The last step was tiny and loud in my chest. I sat with my accounts open and clicked contribute like a person trusting the future again. Then I closed the laptop and took a nap. Not an exhausted crash. A nap because I could. When I woke up, I stood in the doorway to the living room and felt the rare thing you can't fake, quiet pride. I wasn't naive. I was kind. Those two get confused a lot. Only one of them needs a lock. On Sunday, I walked to the lake where we once planned to retire. It looked the same, water doing water, sun doing sun. I watched a dad teach his kid to skip stones, and the rock skittered like it had stage fright, then nailed the 3rd try. It felt right to leave some plans in the water. I headed home, made pasta for one, and didn't set a second fork. When the porch pickup Tuesday came, she took the bag, left the key she'd forgotten, and didn't knock. I watched through the peephole and didn't open the door. The house stayed quiet. The account stayed mine. I changed the playlist again and let the next song play without checking what it was. The account wasn't empty. It was finally mine. If you want the exact steps I took to lock down the accounts, set notarized blocks, and keep the paper trail clean, subscribe and watch the next story where I break down the play-by-play in plain English. Hit that bell so you don't miss the boring moves that save your life.